In episode 1, we got started with Azure and we used Terraform to start setting up our infrastructure. But we never made it to a point where we would actually deploy our application to our virtual machine. So I spent some time with Claude to figure out a plan on how we want to go about doing that. And in this episode, I want to take you through the plan and the steps that we made to get there. And we will be using the Azure Container Registry as well as Github Action to make it happen. But before we go to the main topic of this episode, I want to mention a few quick things on a couple of other changes that we made. So let's dive right in. In the previous episode, once the virtual machine was created, we had this custom data here where we ran some commands on the virtual machine to install and configure Docker. And this seemed fine to me, but I learned along the way that there's this tool called cloud-init, which seems to be some industry standard for configuring virtual machines once they are actually set up. So cloud-init is used to run commands, write files, manage users, install packages, and all of that. So it seems like a great package for us to use. And cloud-init is a YAML-based declarative tool where instead of running the actual commands that we want to do, we describe what we want to have happen on the system. So in this case, we're doing the same thing as before. We want to update the packages with apt-get update, and then we want to install a couple of packages here. And at the end, we are running a couple of commands to enable and set up Docker. And then at the end, just like before, include our Azure user on our virtual machine as a user to allow it to use and manage Docker on the virtual machine. So this was really nice. But once I got here, I was thinking I didn't want to tear down my whole infrastructure and recreate the whole infrastructure just to test these things out. So I learned that with Terraform, you can use Terraform apply and then the replace flag to target just a specific resource in your Terraform configuration that you want to essentially recreate. So this was really nice. We can run Terraform apply and then with the replace flag say that we just want to tear down and spin up again the virtual machine. So this here at the end, we can say the plan is to add one and destroy one, just recreate the virtual machine, but let the rest of the infrastructure be. Now, I've already done this, so I'm not going to turn yes here, say yes here, and just leave that be. But I wanted to show that command as well, because I find it quite useful. Next up, and this is the last thing before we jump into the main topic, I had some formatting issues in my Terraform file, and I learned that Terraform actually has its own formatter. So we can run Terraform FMT to have Terraform kind of format its own Terraform file, which was really nice to discover. And I also ended up including this VS Code specific settings into the repository to use the official Terraform formatter and format on save. One thing to note here as well is that previously I was using this Terraform extension in VS Code, but it turns out the HashiCorp, so HashiCorp being the creators of Terraform, has its own official plugin. So this is the one I suppose that we should be using as default. So I installed this one as well. Anyway, moving on to the main topic of this episode, which is getting our app actually deployed. Now, the first thing that I want to do is to add a new resource with Terraform in Azure. And we're going to add the Azure Container Registry. So this is a place for us where we can push Docker images that we eventually going to build in the pipelines that we're going to set up. So we're going to push that to our own registry, and then we're going to eventually have the virtual machine pull that image and kind of restart the Docker container. So this part here is new. We've added an Azure Container Registry to our infrastructure. And at the bottom here, we are outputting a few more variables. So the login server, as well as the username and password, which is sensitive, to be able to log in using these credentials to the Azure Container Registry. And before moving on, I wanted to quickly show this as well. Now we have this new resource in Azure as well, the Container Registry that we've added with Terraform. Now the next part here is a manual step, which I'm not a big fan of, and I guess goes against good DevOps principles. But this is the setup that we have now initially just for episode 2. And this is in our repository. We've added a number of secrets. So these are a few secrets that we get from the Azure Container Registry that we want to be able to use in our pipelines in GitHub Actions to sign in to the registry. And we also have added an SSH key and the IP address of our virtual machine. And one thing I learned here, which was actually useful, is that even though this repository is public, it is safe for us to add secrets to it. At this point, once they're added, I can't even view them myself, and no one kind of going in here could be able to view them. And if we output them in our GitHub Actions, they're going to be obfuscated and hidden by GitHub. And the last thing is, well, if someone forks this repository, these secrets are not going to be part of that fork. So it seems like we are able to add secrets to our repository, even though the repo itself is public. So at this point, we have what we need in terms of infrastructure, and we've done the little manual step to add some secret environment variables to GitHub. So let's look at the next part of what's actually going to happen in our pipeline with GitHub Action to get the app deployed. So we have this new folder in our repository, .github/workflows, and in it we have our first GitHub action, our first workflow called deploy.yml. Now, the way we've set this up is that it's only going to be run when pushes to the main branch happens, and if there are changes to the app folder or this workflow itself. If that is true, we have one job defined here with a couple of steps. The first one is very standard. You want to check out the code. The second one here is interesting. We're actually going to have the environment here in GitHub Actions log into the Azure Container Registry. And here we're using these secrets that we got from Terraform after the infrastructure was built and that we've manually added to our secret environments in the repository. So we're logging into the Azure container. The next step here, we're going to navigate into the app folder, and then we're going to build and push the Docker image. So anytime this pipeline is run, the GitHub action is going to build the Docker image, and then it's going to push it up to our Azure Container Registry, which it's able to do since we've logged into it here in the previous step. Very nice. And then once that's done, the last step here, deploy to virtual machine. So the last step is using again secrets to SSH into the virtual machine that we've created. And then we're going to pull this new image that was pushed in the previous step. We're using Docker to stop the old container, starting the new one, and that should be it. Boom. We should have our app deployed at this point. And we can see that we are able to navigate to our public IP address that we've set up in Azure that is mapped to our virtual machine. And we can actually see the deployed website now being live in production, so to speak. But just to together take a look at how this is happening, I want to do some changes and let's watch the actual workflows happen. I've made a small little edit here to our super simple website. Running git status, we can see that this file has changed. This is the only diff that we have. So let's go ahead and commit this. And once it's committed, we're going to go ahead and push to main. Heading back over to the repository, we can now see this latest commit has been pushed and our workflow is being triggered. This is because changes has been made to the app folder. And if we go into the details here, we can watch live as all of these things are happening. It's building and pushing the Docker image, it's deploying them to the virtual machine, and at the very end here, we get success. And the last part here is interesting. We're running Docker PS at the very end inside the virtual machine, which we have SSH'd into inside this pipeline. And we can see that the new container here was deployed less than a second ago and it's up and running and everything seems to be working. So if we head over again to the live site and we refresh, we can see that we have just deployed our new changes. Beautiful. That's going to be it for episode 2. I'm having a lot of fun exploring different ways of doing these things. But if you have any ideas, any tips, any tricks, any suggestions, please let me know in the comments on what I could do next, what I could fix, what I could address. I have some ideas on my own, but this is kind of improvised and I'm not exactly sure where I'm heading with this. But thank you so much for watching and I hope to eventually see you in episode 3.